When a boy slid a note on his table, the cop was so surprised he didn't say anything. But when he read it, he immediately jumped out of his seat. In a cozy local diner in Lakeland, Florida, Noah Cantin and his mom were having breakfast. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sounds of morning chatter. Noah, 9 years old, watched the world from his seat. His mother balanced her attention between the morning paper and her son's quiet observations. A few tables away, Officer Benitez from the local police department enjoyed his breakfast alone. His uniform was crisp and bore the insignia of a life dedicated to service and duty. His gaze occasionally swept across the diner. It was a habit of vigilance that always seemed to be present. As Noah's mother excused herself to use the bathroom, Noah was ready to make his move. He had noticed Officer Benitez from the moment they had walked in. He hadn't looked at the officer directly for fear of attracting his attention, but now he could put his plan into action. Noah slipped from his seat. He was clutching a slip of paper in his hand. He approached Officer Benitez, hesitant but determined. Officer Benitez looked up. His eyes softened when he saw Noah. The boy slipped a note onto the table and walked away without saying a word. Officer Benitez was immediately curious. He accepted the note with a nod and smiled, but said nothing. As Noah returned to his table, the officer unfolded the paper. His eyes scanned the writing and his face suddenly tightened. The note stirred something within him. Without a word, he stood up. The note had given him a sense of urgency. It was a call to action that couldn't be ignored. On that day, in a small diner, a simple note from a boy named Noah set in motion a series of events. These would intertwine with the lives of a young dreamer, a mother with a silent strength, and an officer named Benitez in ways none of them could ever have anticipated. Noah watched from his table as Officer Benitez left the diner and slipped in behind the wheel of his patrol car. A whirlpool of emotion swirled in his young boy's heart. His love for heroes, those unconquerable figures of bravery and justice, had always been a guiding star in his life. From comic book heroes to real-life figures in uniform, he was drawn to the idea of serving and protecting. Officer Benitez, with his badge that gleamed like a promise of adventure, had captured Noah's imagination. The note was Noah's bridge to a world he yearned to be part of. That was a world where he could make a difference. Officer Benitez's life was a constant combination of service and sacrifice. For the rest of the day, he walked the streets with the weight of Noah's words in his pocket. His career had been a relentless wave of highs and lows. Each experience shaped a man who viewed the world through a lens of hard-won wisdom and guarded compassion. The kid's note had pierced through his armor. It was a reminder of why he had first put on the uniform years ago. It was never for the thrill of the chase. Every day, he had the opportunity to be someone's hero, even if just for a moment. Who could ask for anything more? Back in the precinct, Officer Benitez called his colleagues together in the briefing room. When all were seated, he slipped the note from his pocket. The room was usually boisterous with the sounds of light-hearted banter and duty, but today, it took on an air of intrigue. Officer Benitez's fellow officers leaned in. Benitez held their attention as he unfolded the note, and when he read the message out loud, it sparked an immediate storm. All the officers spoke at once. Eventually, the desk sergeant cleared his throat and held up a hand. "So, what's the plan, Benitez?" asked Sergeant Lopez. The officers exchanged glances. Each mind raced with possibilities. The note was simple in its wording, but profound in its impact. It had ignited a shared sense of purpose. They all agreed that immediate action was necessary. Outside the precinct walls, the officers continued their daily duties. They patrolled the streets and safeguarded the community. Yet, amid the routine, there was an undercurrent of anticipation. Subtle exchanges, knowing looks, and a shared sense of a mission put an extra bounce in their steps. For 5 years, life for Noah and his mother had been a combination of modest means and unconditional love. Noah's father left when he was just a toddler. His mother had been both a nurturing guardian and a tireless provider. Their small apartment lacked luxury but was abundant in warmth and laughter. Every evening, as she returned from her job at a local grocery store, she would refocus on her steadfast determination to give Noah the best life she could. Noah was acutely aware of their struggles but never spoke about it. He knew the weight of the word budget and the quiet sacrifices his mother made. School was his escape and his battleground. While he was bright and eager to learn, he often found himself on the fringes. His secondhand clothes and packed lunches made him different in a world where children can be unwittingly cruel. Yet, Noah carried a resilience beyond his years. That was his mother's legacy. He faced each day with quiet strength and a heart full of dreams. Despite the challenges, his life was a happy blend of reality and hope. His mother's love was his anchor. His dream of becoming a police officer was his sail. As Officer Benitez drove through the neighborhood, his mind replayed the look on Noah's face when he handed him the note. The child's view of the police was untainted. It was a stark contrast to the complexities he faced every day. It was also a reminder of the purity of their duty and the reason behind the badge. Back at the precinct, a map was spread across the table. It quickly became the focal point of the officers' hushed discussions. Points were marked, routes outlined, and resources allocated. The officers were suddenly united in their clandestine project. It was a project inspired by a boy's note, and it was a project that promised to bridge the gap between the protectors and the protected. Throughout the next day, the tension was palpable, a mix of excitement and responsibility. They were planning something that went beyond the scope of their daily duties. This plan would soon put the power of a child's simple yet profound gesture on display for the world to see. The event was going to be called A Day as a Hero. The officers in the precinct had unanimously decided that. The strategy was set in motion with a blend of military precision and genuine affection. Officer Benitez was more accustomed to the hard calls of law enforcement than the nuances of event planning. This was new terrain for him. He reached out to various departments seeking contributions and support. Each officer brought something unique to the table. Some had connections, others came up with ideas, and yet others had access to resources. They worked in unison. They were comrades working for the same cause. All along, the excitement within the precinct was palpable. The event for Noah was to be a surprise. As the plans for A Day as a Hero took shape, the precinct buzzed with an energy usually reserved for high-stakes operations. Lists were made, roles were assigned, and schedules were coordinated. Meanwhile, Noah and his mother remained blissfully unaware of the brewing surprise. The secret was kept safe within the walls of the precinct, guarded by a team of officers who found themselves eagerly awaiting the day they would reveal their grand plan to Noah. On the morning of the Day as a Hero, the precinct became a stage for a young boy's dream. Noah and his mother arrived. They'd received a crafted invitation from Officer Benitez. At the door, they were greeted with a scene that sparkled with anticipation. Noah's eyes widened in awe as he was welcomed by a parade of uniformed officers. Each wore a smile that mirrored the joy in their young guest's face. Officer Benitez stepped forward. "Welcome, Noah, to your special day," he said, extending a hand to the starstruck boy. What happened next was nothing shy of a beautifully choreographed event. Each step revealed a different aspect of police work. First, there was the ride-along in a patrol car. Its siren wailed and put a huge smile on Noah's face. He sat beside Officer Benitez. His small hands gripped the edge of the seat as they cruised the streets. The city unfolded before him in a blur of colors and movement, unlike anything he'd ever seen. Next, Noah met the Canine unit. A team of officers and their canine partners greeted him officially as he arrived. He watched, wide-eyed, as the dogs demonstrated their skills. Their obedience and agility introduced Noah to the bond between police dogs and their handlers. His laughter rang out as he was introduced to a few of the canines. The highlight of the day was the mock crime scene. Noah turned detective. His imagination fired on all cylinders as he pieced together clues, guided by the encouraging nods of the officers. They watched, impressed by his keen observation and the way his mind worked to solve the puzzle they had laid out for him. Throughout the day, Noah's smile and excited chatter lit up the precinct. His mother stood at a respectful distance. She watched her son's dream unfold, and her heart swelled with pride and gratitude. The officers, too, shared in the joy. For a few hours, their usual routine was forgotten. As the day drew to a close, Noah's thrills gave way to a quiet contentment. He had lived his dream. Yes, it was only for a day, but he knew the experience was etched into his memory. Officer Benitez looked at Noah. He also understood that this day was more than just a series of events. For him, it was an affirmation of the bond between the community and those who swore to protect it. It was a reminder that sometimes heroes come in the form of a young boy with a heart full of dreams. Officer Benitez guided Noah and his mother to a quiet corner of the precinct. The excitement of the day still danced in the boy's eyes, but there was a hush as the officer reached into his pocket. He unfolded the note. It had, after all, initiated the day's events. He held it out for both to see. The words, written in the sideways scrawl of a 9-year-old, were simple yet striking. "I want to be you when I grow up. Thank you," it read. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The weight of those words settled over the three of them like a gentle shroud. Officer Benitez grappled with an upswell of emotions. The note had rekindled a flame within him. In the daily grind of his duties, amidst the chaos and challenges, the essence of his role had become clouded. But Noah's words had pierced through that fog. The boy's note reminded him of the trust the community, especially its youngest members, placed in their protectors. He took a knee at Noah's level. "Noah, your note reminded me of why I became an officer," he said. "It's not just about enforcing the law. It's about being someone people can look up to, someone who can make a difference." For Officer Benitez, the day had been a journey back to the roots of his chosen profession. Noah's note had reminded him of the impact they, as officers, had on the lives they touched. Beyond the badge and the uniform, they were figures of hope and symbols of safety and guidance in the community. His renewed passion for his job came from the power of genuine connection and understanding. As Noah's eyes drifted to sleep that night, dreams of flashing sirens and heroic deeds filled his mind. And, in the heart of Officer Benitez, a renewed sense of purpose and pride took root. Their story was a simple yet prevailing narrative. Both were reminded that, in the pursuit of our duties and dreams, it's the small moments, the simple gestures of kindness and understanding that truly define us. Do you have a story of a police officer showing kindness to a member of the public? Please tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear. For now, we're out of here. Catch you in the next video.